Hello, Bob?
Yes, you're breaking up pretty badly.
Oh, darn it. All right. Yeah, this really sucks. I got some problems with Skype, I guess, or something like that. And I can't use the other number, which sucks. They gave me a fake host number or something as my backup. I don't know what's up. I'll try it again. Let me see what's going on. So go ahead, start talking. Maybe that you can be heard, if you don't mind.
You were talking about the possibility of quantitative easing 3, and I think there's a very good probability of that happening. Firstly, the Fed lies about the amount of money that they distribute. As you know, a couple of years ago, actually 2.5 years ago now, they dispersed about $13.8 trillion. And when asked to give the information on who received that, what happened was that they said that it was a state secret. So Bloomberg, the news agency, they went to court, district court. Court says, look, you got to do that. You got to give them the information. And so they said no, and they went to appeals court, and they lost there as well, and they had to relinquish it. So the point I'm trying to make here is they lie all the time. And they started buying treasuries and agencies. The agencies are the bonds for Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and FHA. And they want us to believe that they have not as yet completed using $600 billion to do so. I think that the figure is probably already somewhere around 1.3 trillion, and with the goal by the summertime being somewhere in the vicinity of 1.7 trillion. If you add that to the 862 billion, you've got just about $2.5 trillion, which was the same amount of money that was used in QE1. And they haven't accomplished anything. I mean, unemployment is still relatively the same, and the economy is essentially not in a recovery. And of course, the higher price of petroleum products, particularly gasoline, is going to further erode that. At $90 a barrel, if you throw in food inflation and the gasoline together, you get a $100 billion loss. At $100, you're looking at something in the order of about $140 billion loss to the pocketbooks of the public, because they're buying gasoline at higher prices. They can't take that money to get down to the store and buy something because it's gone to another country for the most part, because the other countries supply 65% approximately of the oil for the United States. So I think that this is going to cause a problem in financing, and the GDP should drop. Well, oil's around $100, so it should cause a drop of at least 0.5% in GDP, and we're being told various estimates for the year for GDP, most of which are around 3.5%, and I think that's way out of line. I predicted 2.25%, and if you throw in this gasoline and food high cost, then you're at an even lower figure. So they've got to have QE3. They cannot allow deflation to get any kind of hold on the economy. because if they do, if it does, what happens is that the whole system collapses. And that's not very good for anybody, but this is why they're doing what they're doing. And, that's really reflected in pending home sales. January was down 2.8%, December 3.2%. It's a nightmare. And, they talk in terms of millions of homes being lost to their owners this year. And so you put all that together, and I don't know who's spending what or where it's coming from, but I know that it's not going to continue. The savings rate right now is 5.8%. It was 7.5% in November, at the beginning of November. And so people obviously took some of their savings to buy during the Christmas season or holiday season. And so we're going to get QE3. Will it start? Probably late in the summer, and they'll announce it probably maybe after the first of the year, but maybe before. It's hard to make the call on that at this particular time. We're good, but we're not that good. And so we're going to have it. And what is the result going to be? Well, first of all, QE1, that went to bailing out the financial systems in Western Europe, England, and the United States. QE2 has gone toward bailing out the U.S. Treasury and the GSE housing market. What fell down to the public? Probably over that period of time, about $1.6 trillion over those two QE offerings, we'll call them. And what is the result of all that? Well, we got about probably around 7% inflation, and we've got inflation coming that I think by the end of the year will be 14%. And if they have QE3, it could easily go to 25%, maybe 30%. I mean, who knows? That's the kind of possibilities that exist. And one of the reasons, actually two, that inflation has been muted at 7% is that when people do business with the United States and they get paid in dollars and they receive those dollars, it's very inflationary for their economy. So that's in part where some of the inflation is going.
Okay, Bob. Excuse me, Bob.
Am I breaking up on my end?
No, you sound good. I'm working on this right now with the idiots at Blog Talk who like asking me a lot of questions, and like I'm just telling them, give me a good number. And so I'm playing games. I'm trying to resolve this issue here with knuckleheads over at Blog Talk. Anyways, I have a question. Can you please just go in the forecaster? You've mentioned, you alluded to the fact that 1936 and 37 during the Depression, there was a similar monetization of the debt type situation. So we could be going down that road again, and it could affect the dollar and the stock market. And you believe, from my reading of the forecaster, that there is going to be a fall off in the stock market, maybe down to test new lows. Can you please go into that rationale that leads you to say that?
Well, as inflation gets worse and wages don't increase any viable amount, I'm not talking about 0.5% or 1%, which has generally been what's been going on because of all the layoffs. And you're looking at I lost my train of thought. Give me the question again.
Okay, what leads you to say, through your analysis, your senses of things, that we are going to have a falling off of the stock market down to test basically the old lows or new lows, because it's hard to see that on the horizon now. Stock market is soaring, but you see quite a turnabout.
Well, what I was getting at was profits. They're not going to be there because companies are not going to be able to continue to pass on these increases to the public. The buying power just isn't there in the hands of the public because inflation is going up at 7%, and it not only includes food but many other things, and now oil on top of it. And so they're going to have to cut back, they being corporations, and the cutback will come in a form of lower profits. And another thing, too, is I don't think there's going to be an announcement of QE3 until later in the year or early next year. And if Wall Street doesn't think that we're going to have an early QE3, they'll take profits and, quote, sit on the sidelines. And that should cause the Dow to go down to at least 10,000. The market has been fueled almost in totality with high unemployment, particularly major firms laying off just about everybody in sight, and the injection of a tremendous amount of money into the economy. And, of course, it was all made up out of thin air. And so if they don't think that that money is going to be forthcoming again or don't know for sure that it's not going to be coming, they're going to take profits. And then we have the situation which is ongoing in the Middle East with Libya. I don't think that'll last too long, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, and Gaddafi will be asked to take a trip. But the big thing in the Middle East really is Saudi Arabia. They gave away $37 billion the other day to keep the natives from being restless. And the first word that comes back is that's not enough. I mean, you people have got hundreds of billions of dollars that you essentially stole from us as citizens. So we can't buy that. We want more, especially the younger people. They're demanding. And it's going to lead to further problems. I don't think from country to country the problems in the Middle East have been solved yet. And supposing they decide they're going to have another war, that really could turn things upside down. So I think the market is going to sell off, and what's reasonable on the Dow, 10, maybe even 11,000. It all depends on what happens in between.
Okay. So basically, isn't Honig the KC Fed president? Isn't he related to one of the Honigs who either started the Federal Reserve, who are presently owners of the Federal Reserve?
I don't know.
My research has
can't
led me to
answer the question.
Okay, fine. It's funny how he's kind of a turncoat in this whole thing, and he's calling for higher interest rates. But he's in the minority, and I think they're going to jettison his butt when they do the next repopulation of the Federal Reserve Board. Isn't he been ousted, basically? He's just in there as like a lame duck, basically?
I don't know what the call on that is, but I do know he's doing what you say he's doing. And that is doing away with quantitative easing and finally biting the bullet. And classically, from a classical economic viewpoint, that is the thing that should have been done 3 years ago. Actually, it's over 3 years now. And they're going to have to do it sooner or later. I think the reason they haven't done it so far is they want to coordinate other events with it. And I think that's what's holding them up.
Okay. Well, I've got actually 2 people here at Blog Talk in the help center, and besides asking me a billion questions, like, hey, I need help, not answering your questions, Blog Talk. They said now Google Voice doesn't work with Blog Talk Radio anymore, so I can't have a backup number. And I'm sorry, I don't want to answer any more of your questions, Blog Talk. So that sucks. So we're stuck with lousy Skype for the moment. I really apologize. Try to come up with some other plan for the next show. It doesn't sound so broken up. How about people in the chat? How's it sounding to you? Somebody give me some feedback. Maria, are you still up?
You're perfect with me right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe they fixed it because I was complaining. Maybe I don't know.
I mean, if you can be perfect, what can I say?
No, it sounds good. It sounds pretty clear. Hopefully it's getting through to the other folks too. Right on. Well, so basically, yeah. I mean, Honig is the only guy who's talking something sensible, which is deflation of the real estate market. I mean, the real estate market has got to come down. Okay, it's really got to come down. Now, it's probably going to be brought down by just people stop buying, and that will force it down. But it needs to come down because of interest rates. If interest rates get to be more normal, that will bring the real estate crashing down. I don't think this thing can be solved unless the real estate market crashes. What goes up must come down to solve us out of this problem. And everything else has been just denial of that and avoidance of that. So... and Honig is saying as much, and I think they've decided to kick him out because he's going against the tide, so to speak.
And that's probable.
It's Bernanke. It's Bernanke. He is.
I said that about 3 weeks ago in the forecast that I expected by the end of the year that the 10-year U.S. Treasury note rates would be 4 to 4.25%. And this morning, Morgan Stanley came out and said relatively the same thing.
Let me ask you this. I'm just doing a little search on and find out what's happening on this Honig character. Yeah, he says the biggest banks must be broken up. Yeah, Honig is really have a lot of respect for him, even though I think he is one of the family. So there's a little bit of dissension within the Zionist family structure that owns the Federal Reserve and stuff like that. That's my opinion on the situation, my little assessment here. Okay, but all right, back to the forecaster. You mentioned that Barack's numbers have plunged in all 50 states, according to Gallup. And I go by Gallup. By these other polls, I don't know what's up with them. I think Gallup is a fair reflection of things. And thank you for sourcing that. Is there going to be any move to replace him, or do you think we're going to get faced with another 4 years of Obama because they're going to engineer it basically his reelection?
Well, first of all, Obama doesn't make any decisions, and no president does. They're made by the people behind the scenes. And so, where they're going to go with that remains to be seen. It's a hard one to answer.
I like how you covered how Indiana and Arizona are getting tough on immigration, illegal immigration, which is great. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, there's a lot of people without jobs in America who would gladly take $8 to $10 an hour just to be working. And those jobs are being held illegally by people who are illegally in the country. And our government looks the other way as they keep Native Americans unemployed. And I don't know whether that's all going to lead, but it's not very good.
And they don't work for $8 or $10 an hour, by the way. Anytime I was looking for some immigrant help before when I was doing some work on my condo, I went over down to the Kelly Moore where they all hang out and everything like that, and they wanted like 15, and I was all, so I hired some, and they were lousy workers, man. Like the guy had a phone in his hand, cell phone in his hand, he was talking to Mexico or something, and on the other hand, he had a paintbrush, and I was all, man, get the hell out of here. So I contacted this Chinese guy I know who's really good, Mr. Lee, and he came over with his crew, and they actually did hard work, and they fucking busted it out. They did a great job for a cheaper price than any Mexican labor. So I think that whole thing is I poo-poo the whole Hispanic immigrants. If you really want to hire some good, hardworking immigrant, I would hire a Chinese immigrant over a Mexican immigrant any day of the week for all eternity. I just want to say that. They're totally worthless workers, I think, and they charge too much money for what the lousy thing they do. Another thing I want to talk about, did you see how the Royal Canadian Mint came out saying that they're having a hard time sourcing silver for their coins? Did you hear that?
No, I didn't, but they're not the only ones. There's been a lot of professional companies, so to speak, that have not been able to fund what they want to fund.
Yeah, and Rickards came on the show on the King World News and echoed those sentiments, and he praised the Royal Canadian Mint and that story. And so that's Rickards, and he's a heavyweight too. So these idiots, Puplava and Morgan, who were Morgan and Puplava came on for a third show. They already did two shows reiterating the fact that there was no shortage in silver. And they came on a third show justifying the Fed running our country's currency, justifying it, making excuses for them, further saying there is no shortage. And now Morgan's going to be a regular guest on Financial Nonsense, Poop's channel, so they can further disseminate. I'm branding them as disinfo merchants at this point, as compromised members of the Fed and Zionists, because they're saying statements that are blatantly untrue. If the Royal Canadian Mint is coming out publicly and saying that they're having a hard time sourcing silver for their coins, that's a shortage in silver of 999 fine silver as well. So Morgan was trying to qualify. It says, well, there's no shortage of 3 nines, but there's a shortage of 5 nines. To try to hedge his bets or something like that. He said he talks out of both sides of his face. And Puplava trying to justify the Fed, absolutely an enemy of America as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I agree with that. And he's never invited me on his show. I can't understand why. Do you think he might be acting for the U.S. government?
Absolutely. They talk about disinfo or COINTELPRO. In my opinion only, based on his statements, which have turned out to be false and misleading to the public, I would say yes. This is what we're talking about. There's an example of a CIA op, in my opinion, right there. Because it's been proven. Listen, you know what he called? He actually, quote-unquote, called Kaiser stupid. He insulted on his show. That's how he is. He calls Kaiser stupid as though everybody buying some silver is a stupid idea. Don't do it under that kind of auspices.
Who said that?
Puplava called, quote-unquote, Kaiser stupid. He said, you can't crash.
Let me tell you something. Kaiser might be a lot of things, but he's a professional in the market. And this is extremely important. David Morgan is not an expert in the market. He's never worked in the markets. He's overseen what goes on in the markets as an individual. He's never been trained in those markets. He was trained as an engineer, and then he changed his name, which always disturbed me.
What?
Now he and this other Weigart are telling us that gold's going to be confiscated at $2,000 because they got that from a special inside source. That sounds like the same gobbledygook we hear from Lindsey Williams. I mean, good luck to them, but they are not trained in the financial markets. Max Kaiser is. Paul Craig Roberts is. I am. Unfortunately, Puplava is too. But and he can have his say, and it's from a professional viewpoint, and everybody should have an opinion, particularly if they're professional. But these other periphery people should not be talking about financial matters like they were professionals, because they are not. And it's as simple as that. And I think people are being grossly misled what the intention of Weigart and Morgan and Puplava are. I don't know. But they certainly are bringing out things that have absolutely no basis whatsoever. And I didn't hear what you heard in their relation to what they had to say about Max Kaiser. But, I mean, Max tells it like it is. If you don't like it, don't listen. And I have the same attitude. You know, I'm 75 years old. I don't do this for a living. I mean, I do 30 hours a week on these radio shows. Nobody pays me. Now, Paplava has a brokerage firm, which charges very high commissions, incidentally. Morgan has a publication, and I know David Morgan very well. And Wiegand has a letter as well. And I don't know whether Wiegand, however you pronounce his name, is a market professional. I can't say. He could very well be. But I put precedence to the people who have been in the industry, right or wrong, who have gone through 10 or 20 years of being in the commodity market as a pro or in the stock market or whatever. And they're going to disagree with me, and I don't take any exception to that, especially if it's well-based. You know, maybe I'm wrong. But the people who are not qualified shouldn't be doing it.
Well, you're not usually
wrong. And I told
wrong.
some of them that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, recently, one of these people who has never been trained in the market said the gold was going to $12.50. And I told somebody close to me, I said, you shouldn't be doing that. He's not a professional in that field. Okay? He turns around and forgets that he told people the market was going to $12.50. Then he tells them it's going to $2,000. I mean, what is this, some kind of a game? I mean, you got to give a justification why you changed your mind. And why would he be qualified to do that?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, and so just to bounce back to about Honig. All right, Honig is required to step down in October of this year, 2011, because of the bank. The central bank has age discrimination. They force you to retire at 65, and so, unfortunately, Honig will be out in October due to their policy, sir, which is he has to leave at 65, and that's terrible. So hopefully, Mr. Honig, the KC president, will maybe start up a blog or something so he can continue to criticize the Fed and Bernanke from afar, I guess.
Well, I don't know that that's a very healthy idea.
What do you mean, retiring?
No, picking up after they've gotten rid of him and continuing to give his professional opinion might get him killed.
Oh, my God, wow. Okay.
I mean, these people do murder people. I mean, this is a fact of life. They kill presidents. I mean, do you think Honig, who is not a president, or at least of the United States, do you think he means anything to them? No, not at all.
And they might suicide him out. I mean,
That's right. It's very possible.
Absolutely. The research I'm doing, boy, it's amazing how many people come up suicided, and never had any problems. They were very active members of society, but they spoke the wrong thing, and all of a sudden they had a suicide, Wow. It's terrible. All right, listen, there's somebody in the chat room. It's Pro Derivative. He's from Germany. He wants me to ask you a question, and since he said he would do one of my videos up on this channel, that's Bob Chapman's interview, do basically GNOB Radio, transcribe it, I will grant him this question. He says, Bob, what does Bob think about African gold mines, especially Gold Fields and Harmony Gold? Those are stocks or something.
I used to be the largest buyer in the world of South African gold mining shares. I lived in South Africa and Rhodesia in the late 1960s and the early 1970s. I speak Shona, and or at least I did. I had a large business in Salisbury, which is now Harare, Zimbabwe. And I left Africa because I saw what was on the way. The sellout in both countries of the white minority, we'll call them. And yes, South Africa had apartheid, the separation of races, and to an extent they had it in Rhodesia, but it was different. I mean, they had scholarships for young black kids to attend school, and they did mostly the right things. And believe me, I had several hundred black employees, African employees, so I knew a lot of people. But I saw it coming, and I left. And it was a good thing I did, because several years later, the whole thing blew up, and I handed first Rhodesia over to the communist who's running it today as a butcher, and I happened to know him quite well. And then came South Africa. Now, this is a long-winded way of giving you an answer, but you had to understand where I'm coming from.
Okay, thanks for the background on that. Yeah, okay.
South Africa doesn't have a chance. They keep on pushing all the time to take over the mines. They think everything belongs to them. The ANC is a communist party. Joe Slovo was one of the formulators of ANC, and he was a hardcore Marxist. And this is where this party and this government evolved from. And they are going to take everything sooner or later. And I'm surprised they haven't taken it already. And they blame the push for a nationalization of the mines on the ANC Youth Congress, which is, I think, is people under 35 years old. I'm guessing at that. I don't know for sure. And they want the mines because they want to spend the money. They spent every nickel that was left over by the previous governments, both in Zimbabwe as well as South Africa. And now they want everything else. White people can't even apply for jobs in South Africa. There are none. They have black quotas, and you're just not going to get hired. They're trying to drive the young white South Africans out of the country. Have been for a long time. Every week, there's 10 or 15 attacks on farms. Very often the people are murdered. How many people have been murdered? Thousands. Are there anybody ever prosecuted? No. And so I wouldn't touch anything in South Africa with a barge pole.
Well, to top it off, I could say two things on that. Number one, South Africa is the murder capital of the world statistically.
Without question.
Okay. And secondly, I know a very stunningly beautiful girl who lives in South Africa, and I was talking to her about this whole thing. She says she can't wait to get out. She wants to move to Canada or something like that. So they've made it very unhospitable now that they got their way. All the sanctions back in the 80s, Tutu, apartheid is wrong, and now what do we have? Murder capital of the world. So you got your way, and it led to butchery. Another Marxist philosophy that you adopted. It's not your people. It's a Zionist, Jewish supremacist idea, and you bit the bullet, and what happened? People die. Same what happened in Russia. Same what happened in China, and it's all over the world. Yet they still bite the apple, and it's poison, and you'll never learn, and the Zionists laugh. Ha, 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 So another classic example. So basically, these golden, I guess these are gold fields and Harmony Gold. I think I've heard of Harmony Gold. Those are miners that are on the stock exchange or something, and so you wouldn't have anything to do with either one of them because of the black nationalist will ruin the company because of their ideas. They'll squander.
Well, they'll nationalize them, and you lose your investment. I don't want to take that risk. I mean, I wouldn't buy a mining company that had a mine in Venezuela because the communist runs it, or Bolivia, or Ecuador, or Uruguay, or even in Argentina where the fascists run the government. They're as bad as the communists are. And so you don't want to do business in those places. If the governments change, well, you can consider it. But South Africa, they are doomed. And look at Zimbabwe. It's a reenactment of the Weimar Republic for different reasons. And the Weimar Republic was the great inflationary spiral and collapse that was forced upon the German people after the First World War. And I saw a critique recently that's saying, yes, that contributed, the reparations contributed to the fall, but there were other reasons. Let me tell you something. I talked to people who were in the Abwehr, and that was a German external counterintelligence operation. People who I knew very well, colonels and generals. Some of them were in the Wehrmacht, some of them were in the Navy, naval intelligence, and some of them were in the SS. They all told me the same story. The same story.
What is this? Okay. We have a caller. I didn't give out the caller number. I don't know why you'd want to call in and interrupt Bob. We're learning a lot here, but I'll give you 2 seconds, man. You better make it quick. All right.
Hey,
what's your question?
How's it going? My name's Ronald.
And, what's your question? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the South Africa thing you're speaking about right now. What do you expect from a country full of a bunch of filthy, stinking niggers?
Oh, God. I shouldn't let him on. All right. Well, that's inappropriate. I mean, we don't want to insult people.
It's interesting, the attitude that people take. In Africa, they've called the black people kafas, which is like calling them a nigger, which is very insulting. But they don't think anything of it because they call each other niggers. But if a white man says it to them, well, sometimes they take exception. And I had several hundred employees working in my company, all black. And I never had a problem with them. We get along great. I mean, there was some problems. I had one guy try to take a bite out of my arm because he wouldn't work, and I fired him. And I had a fight with the guy, and I couldn't knock him out. His head was like granite. But anyway, finally, the police came and took him away. But with the exception of that, these are nice people, and I get along great with them. It's just that their leadership is perpetually bad in either country. There's a lot of Shonas live in South Africa. It's I think it's the second biggest tribe after the Zulus, and then there's the Shangani, and the Northern Zulus also live together with the Shonas in what used to be Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And they get along all right. They occasionally kill each other, but, they have a beef, and that's the way they do it. And if it's a serious thing, then they kill each other. And that's their culture, I guess. But anyway, I think the bottom line is this. They're really incapable of leading themselves into a prosperous future because they're limited in their abilities. And if it wasn't for outside help for the most part, in the case of South Africa, inside help from the white minority who are very helpful to their economy, I think if all of the white people left, they'd have a problem.
Absolutely.
And I'm certainly not a racist, believe me. I've lived deeply among these people.
Now, listen, they're inclined to certain behaviors that are not conducive to productive society. It's the same thing. I experienced this. I've talked about this in my travels to Asia and living there. The Chinese people sensibly because the locals are all a bunch of drunken gambling fools. That's known fact, okay? They like to drink, they like to gamble, they like to womanize. That's their lifestyle. But that what happens when you have a lifestyle like that is hard to manage money and do things in a sensible business fashion. That's why the Chinese miners go into Cambodia, they go into Thailand, they go into Philippines, they go into Laos, and run the whole story because they have a good brain about themselves. They don't go off to extremes as far as being drunken gambling fools. And it's probably a similar thing in Africa. You know, they'll get the money, they'll get the control by force or shaming you into it or whatever, and making these claims on whatever justification as our land or whatever. They'll squander the money, and probably some of the so-called globalists, what I will call Zionists, will come in. Central banking, fronted companies will come in and buy it out from under them at a bargain price. So it'll be a transition. It'll go from the white Boers to the black nationalists for a very short period of time. And then it'll be bought out because it'll be run down the toilet financially, structurally, by some Goldman Sachs type front company who will resuscitate it back into normalcy, into profit. And that's what I see would happen.
And you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It's just like when I left, I told people, I said, this is what's going to happen. And not one of them, and I knew thousands of white South Africans and Rhodesians very well, and not one would listen to me. And those who got out with their money were very lucky, and not many did. They lost it all. And, you know, psychopolitics is not something that most people have experience in or have studied. And so it's really hard for them to understand. You know, I remember one time when there was fighting over in the Congo, and Moise Shambe had his mercenary force, and they brought in Mike Hoare, who was a professional mercenary from South Africa, and he and a group of black and white, we'll call them soldiers, just decimated the forces of the other guy. I forget what his name was. But the point is that what I told when we discussed the Congo, the comment was, well, the South Africa and the UN are never going to let that happen. I said, I got news for you. They're the enemy, the UN. And he couldn't understand that. Well, he stayed, and I understand from context that he, like so many others, lost everything. And they had to start all over again, most of them in South Africa. And then, you know, during the 90s, they got the government in hand, the black people, and they did the same thing. And those people left there, and they went to Australia, New Zealand, and Canada for the most part.
Yeah, it's kind of like a brain drain, really. And so they'll find out that they're idiots, and they took for granted. I mean, it wasn't a perfect scenario, but I think they'll probably respect the white rule that has just given up and thrown their hands up in the air and just bailed, basically. And they'll go, labor in other countries that will be more conducive and appreciative of their efforts, and because they're very sensible.
Well, it goes further than that. The Western nations have deliberately allowed the collapse of these countries. I mean, Mugabe is murdering thousands of people, his own people, not white people or yellow people or green people, his people. I mean, there's 3 million Rhodesians, Zimbabweans, who live in South Africa. They're terrified. Can't make a living.
But that's true.
What kind of a guy is this? And incidentally, again, I know this guy very well. I used to talk to him all the time when he was in prison. And because he was smart. He was a very, very smart man. And why do England and America and France Why have they allowed this to happen and done nothing to stop? I mean, we see them all ready to get ready to go into Libya to stop what is now a civil war, but they can't do anything about what went on and has and still going on in Zimbabwe. And so obviously, we don't have to try to apply logic here. There's an agenda, and that agenda is, we want you Africans to kill each other so there won't be many of you left. That's what it's all about. They want to get rid of them.
All right, two things on that. Number one,
I know, I've been there. I've done that. I live with these people. I mean, we used to take cargo out to the tribal trust land. And this is where the African lived in Zimbabwe. That's what they called them, tribal trust lands. And most white people were afraid to go out there. I never was afraid. I went out there. I got along great with them. Never carried a weapon, and I had plenty of them. So it isn't what, this whole question about buying shares in these companies in South Africa, we've given a very elongated background to this. But that's why you can't, because you never know when they're going to pull the plug out of these companies. And I'm not going to be in their stocks, I'll tell you that. I stopped buying them, I think it was July the 16th, 1975, the first day of the Soweto riots. And I used to go into Soweto all the time. Never had a problem.
Well, the mind, not the minds, but the mind is a fertile grounds. And if you poison those fertile grounds with fertilizer that appears to be good, but it's actually Marxist philosophy, you're going to have problems in whatever people. And that's what I think what you're saying there is the black people, if they're haven't been corrupted by these Marxist ideologies, which are self-destructive, they're the Stuxnet virus for a society, then you're okay. But if they've been poisoned by this Marxist thing, they turn into animals. And the same thing happened with Chairman Mao. Mao had all of his leadership, all of his older men and stuff that helped him, destroy the Chiang Kai-shek and take over. What did he do? He turned on them, and he told all the youngsters, the neophytes of his revolution, all the 20-year-old Chinese men, to go out and round up all of those older men who helped, his colleagues, and he had them all chastised in public and then butchered, murdered. And that's typically how this goes. This Bolshevism, they kill their own. And I think you said that. So it's just a complete murderous blood fest, ultimately.
And that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And that's the way it is. It is the poison of this ideology. It doesn't necessarily have to be Marxist. Only in this case it is. But can it be any of those social isms, so to speak? None of them work. I mean, what do you think the New World Order is all about? We thought for years it was going to be a communist one world government. We were wrong. It's going to be a fascist one world government. But what real difference is there between the two? When someone's got their foot on your neck, it doesn't matter what ism it is, your foot's still on your neck.
Yep. Well, it's not the Founding Fathers type of philosophy. It's socialism, communism, Marxism. They're all kind of about the same thing, and they're all been propagated out by the same people. Let's just put it that way. All right, the same family, the same little network of people. And you know what? One thing is that I've noticed is that the same network or genre or ethnicity of people that seem to come up with all these poisonous ideas don't use them themselves. Bingo! As far as I'm concerned, it's not good enough for you, but it's good enough for somebody else. You go ahead and take my idea, but I don't actually go by my own philosophy. I pick another philosophy.
Yeah, it's money and power.
Because the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. That's why it seems to succeed, because there's that weakness in mentality of people that the grass is always greener. So I won't believe in my own people. I'll believe in somebody else's idea. Maybe that'll work, No.
Well, it's true. That's why people do the things they do, and it's disconcerting, but it's human nature.
All those philosophies are atheist, and I'm not a believer in Jesus or any of that kind of stuff. But I like spiritualism in general. But the point is that atheisms have no rules. Atheists have no good book. Atheists have no golden rule. The atheist is like a corporate mindset, basically. Anything goes for the ultimate end, which would be case of profit. The atheist has no rules, so they're not bound by anything. And so that's what happens. True. Yeah, that's the lousy part about atheism. I'm not sure what God is the right one, or maybe they're all right or they're all wrong. But atheism, no, that's a worse alternative. I'd rather believe in a God, even if it didn't exist, than become an atheist, man, because then it's no rules. And a society of atheism, it's bad stuff, man.
Chaos.
Amoral. Do anything. It's all good,
Yep.
So, all right. Basically, silver, man, I'm so glad I made the move. I mean, palladium is still strong. It's still a good metal. It's still rare. It still has use. But if what you said at the beginning of the show, the collapse of the stock market, it's going to take down physical silver with it and gold.
No.
Yay.
Absolutely not.
Good.
Absolutely not. History tells us, look at the deflationary 30s. Gold and silver shares went up over 500%. The price of gold doubled during the period between 77 and 81. Gold and silver shares went up 40 times what the price of gold itself went up. And, of course, now we're seeing all this catch-up by the physical prices of gold and silver. Silver's up. It's been trading between plus 54 and plus 60 cents all day long since 4 o'clock this morning.
Just solid, man.
I mean, they can't get it down. And those people at J.P. Morgan Chase, they can't get out. They're going to lose $20, $30, $40 billion. It's going to be big. And you know something? They're going to try to make the American public pay for it.
Oh, God.
You watch.
Yeah.
You watch. But incidentally, for those of you who would like a free introductory copy to the International Forecaster, it's about business, finance, economic, social, and political issues all over the world, published on Wednesdays and Saturdays by email, twice a month by hard copy for those who are not on the net, and everything that you need to know every week is in that publication. Just go to theinternationalforecaster.com, theinternational, FORECASTER.com, or www.intforecaster.com. That's intforecaster.com. If you have a question, and we answer everybody, you can email us. And we'll also, if you request it, send you our latest choices of gold and silver shares, which we have in our publication. Just go to Bob, B-O-B, at intforecaster.com. That's Bob at intforecaster.com, or you can call toll-free 877-479-8178. That's 877-479-8178. Get a copy of either, and they have a special offer there. You can get a free 1-year subscription, and the deal that they're offering is really terrific.
Okay, I think I have a question coming from Maria. She's a lovely German lady, a young lady. She's a pretty young woman, and she's from Germany. And I think she may have a question for you, Bob, that she'd like to ask you. Maria, do you have a question for Bob? Let's see here in the chat room, I'm calling. No, I'm not sure. See, we still got you for 2 minutes here, Bob. So basically, are you thinking buying silver at this point?
Absolutely.
Even now.
I do it all the time. I do it 2 or 3 times a month. And I usually buy the coins, pre-64s, dimes, quarters, and halves, 90% silver, because I like to think that if I ever have to use them, everybody knows what they are. And I just keep on buying them. I keep on buying gold coins, too.
Okay, so sounds good. I mean,
but not, in the last several months, I bought a lot more silver than I did gold. But they're going much, much higher. And take advantage of it. We got a big short squeeze going on here. Where will it go? Probably $50, maybe higher. I mean, that's fantastic. It's been a long time coming. Where will gold go this year? Maybe 2,000, 2,400. It's certainly going to go to 1,650. I mean, it's very close to that now. It's only $250 away. And it's hard as central banks and the U.S. Treasury tries to keep the prices down. They can't do that permanently. I mean, they've relentlessly gone up since gold was $252 an ounce. And so it's a great opportunity to preserve your wealth.
Okay, think of it in those terms, just as wealth preservation. And if you make a little money on the side, hey, so be it. I mean, that's great boot. Okay, so Marie doesn't have the question. Not now, sorry. Okay, maybe next show, Maria. I'm looking forward to that. She's a lovely woman in Germany, and she's a big fan of yours, Bob.
Well, tell her I thank her very much. And I spent 4 years in Germany and 3 years in Switzerland, so I'm very familiar with German people.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a great discussion, and I wish you well, and I hope that you'll come back on GNOB Radio next week, please.
Done.
Yay!
Just tell me when.
You're the man. Right on, dude.
Yeah, I like doing programs and having these discourses and pick a spot, and we'll do it again next week.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And say hello to Judy.
Thank you all for listening.
Okay.
What's that?
Say hello to Judy. I really appreciate her work, too.
Yeah, she didn't get her hole in one yet. But I had 288s this weekend. For an old man, that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, that's good for anybody.
I played with 2 guys in their late 40s, and I drove as far as they did on all their drives, and they just looked at me and said, gee, how do you do that?
Well, what can you drive it, like
anyway.
275 or something?
Yeah, that's about right.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah, that's where the average pro hits it. Well, I'm certainly not a pro, but just to give people a yardstick. And there's lots of guys on the tour that average over 300, but there's many that are 250, 260, 270. So they're more interested in having the ball straight than getting it further.
Yeah, I mean, because your second shot is the approach there, and you want to be in a good position, not to have to, make up for it, So, yeah, totally.
That's right.
I enjoy golf. Yeah, I enjoy golf a lot. Yeah, it's good. Do you walk the tour, walk the course, or do you take a cart?
No, I don't. I'm too old for that now. I have a golf cart, and but you get enough exercise. I go out twice in the weekends, and then I have the masseuse come in on Monday morning to work me over.
Oh, I love that. When I lived in Southeast Asia, I would get a massage almost every day, whether a body massage or foot massage, sometimes just foot massage, for an hour or something like that, because it's very cheap to do. It costs you like $5-6 for an hour foot massage or something like that. Oh, it's just incredible. So, yeah, you got to have that massage after the exercise. It really makes a difference. But here in America, you basically, no one does it because it's so, beyond the reach of most people's financials.
That's true. But I do it for circulatory reasons at my age. And, you're using muscles that you don't normally use during the week, and they have to be taken care of. And that's what we have done.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay.
With that, tell me when you want me, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Have a nice one.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.